Alright, so fortunately the forestry mod for Tekkit is not going to be included in the next version of Tekkit in 2.2. 2.1.2, whichever it is. So this entire farm that I showed in the last video is used to roundabout make diamonds using the mass fabricator will be obsolete. I've turned it on here, so I'm going to make a video just to record that it actually does work pretty well for it becomes like a museum. But basically, I guess I'll trace it backwards. Right now I'm sort of priming this because there's pumps down below that feed more scrap into this, but when you first turn them on they're green and they don't feed it nearly as fast as it can be used, so to get it started, not to waste, to get rid of the scrap anyway, I was just feeding some in, but I could also get the machine sort of going, so when everything's full it's a little boring. But anyway, basic gist of it, I'll do the whole thing again, is energy comes into the mass fabricator, you know, that's the industrial craft power, and is converted into UU matter, which I could then turn into diamonds. Right now I'm saving it for make sure I have enough stuff to make my next iteration of machine that won't use any agriculture or farming mod, because obviously that doesn't work, or it won't work anymore. So, but you can see I've saved up quite a bit. The energy comes from over here. These generators that take in biofuel, and as you can see when they're all full, basically they produce energy as fast as the mass fabricator can pull it out. Now eventually what will happen is these will start to run out of fuel because the fuel is being pumped in, not pumped in at the same rate that it's burned, which is too bad. And so this will start to drop, but it can go quite a while. It'll definitely go the length of this video and quite a bit after that, I would think. So where does that come from? That comes from these tanks here. You can see they're starting to drain. There's a lot of them in here, and it's all pumped out here and out to the generators. It comes from this bank of stills here. Now you can see these some of these are actually still full too, because when they're all stored up, they don't get emptied as fast necessarily as the tanks do. There's only a certain number of paths out. As it all starts to get drained, they'll all be drained. But right now you can also see that they all have plenty of biomatter, which is being supplied through these pipes. And what I've done since the last video, is to reduce lag. The pipes used to come from all the way over there in those green tanks and be full sort of all the time. And those green tanks, those tanks feed these generators, those engines, which fuel both the stills and the fermenters. So they're very important. There's something that I want to show you too. But it was also then coming past here and going in to feed all those, and it was causing an uneven load into the stills, as well as a lot of lag because it was just like sloshing around all the time. So what I built was this train system. It's a little tough to see through lens, but basically these are tank carts using the Minecraft mod, and they are pumping out fuel through each individual pipe. So these are alternating stone and cobblestone pipes. They are pumping out fuel from these carts, and then when one of these tanks is empty, it comes down here and gets loaded with these loaders, which are also being pumped from these individual tanks. You can see that this one here has recently been filled. So if we go to the second, oh, there's one right there. So that tank is now, main cart is now getting filled. So the pipe's empty right now because it has to pump individually everything of liquid at a time. Once it fills back up, go back here, you can see this particular tank is empty, and that one fills faster. That's on the left, a little bit faster because the pipe moves. But it in general keeps things pretty even, and it keeps number of pipes and stuff down, and it also makes sure that the stills and the this stuff, where does it come from? It comes from these fermenters in here. These burn sugarcane manure, and the water, I moved the water tower up onto the roof here into 3 individual pumps because I was not able, with one set of pipes, to keep enough water in these 3 sets of fermenters. And you'll notice that there are 4 different colored pipes: blue, yellow, red, and the reason for that is to keep the distribution of sugarcane and manure both in the proper inputs, because these red power tool pipes don't care. They'll allow any material to go into whichever thing, and it's all based on orientation. And also to keep things distributed well, because otherwise the red ones would stay full all the time, the blue ones would barely get any of the same here, this red one here. But otherwise the distribution would be even, and so it would be as efficient. So those are all powered by this sorter here, which just rotates through. I used to use wheat as fermenters too, sometimes fertilizer, so it just rotates through every so often and ships whatever it can up into the fermenters. So I don't usually go this way. I think I'll follow the wire. That would be smart. So all of the sugar cane, so here's the farms. They're all automated. And most of the wheat goes to make manure, which is used for the fuel, and then the sugar cane is to make biofuels converted. So again, to reduce pipe lag, I've set up these train systems where sugar cane is collected, say, in these chests, and then this is configured to only send out when there's a full stack. So when it's traveling down the pipe, it sends one packet that's worth a stack into this chest here, instead of 64 individual packets, or many more. As you see all the sugar cane coming in, it really can bog down the system. Actually get canned off if there's too much lag with the way Minecraft does its networking. Now there's 2 train sets. The other one is the bog train. I'll show how that works next. But an important thing to notice, there's the sugarcane top so that other card is. There it is. Now that's an interesting thing. I have a crossing pattern here, but so that they don't collide, I put in this detector here. So this is going to wait here until the bog train goes by. You hear that come, because it has a very high frequency. And once it goes by, this guy starts again. It does some dropping off and picking up. And eventually, it's back over here. It starts picking up sugarcane, various other things that have been dropped off, and brings it over and distributes them all. See, this is another distributor that takes full stacks of things at a much slower rate, and the reason it does that is so that this doesn't get, say, completely full of sugar cane, so that there's no room to put any fertilizer in, and then no fertilizer goes up, no manure, and then it just bogs down. This is scrap coming from above, I'll show you that in a second. It goes over here to the chest. This switch up here goes up to the mass fabricator. When you turn the mass fabricator on, it turns these on. It starts pumping as much scrap as it can out. The timing's still a little off because it's not supposed to have any in the pipes, but it's okay. In addition to the sugarcane on top, I have another full sugarcane, 4 sets of sugarcane farms down here. So it turns out to fuel those 12 fermenters, I need a lot of sugar. So, the next step, I guess I can show where the manure comes from, which is right here in this automatic crafting table. Let's say make manure. So this part, as it comes through, it collects wheat from all the wheat farms, deposits it here, and it also collects dirt from the bog farms and deposits it here. And just to make sure, again, this doesn't get jammed, there's a full stack of either dirt or manure. It ships it out. The full stack of dirt will go get recycled. The full stack of manure will get sent out to actually be used. And that's, again, to reduce the lag from too much stuff in pipes. And then fertilizer comes from over here. It also uses wheat. No, it doesn't. It uses sand, which is being generated as an automatic sand maker. So cobblestone gets made behind here, and then this just periodically breaks it. It's a block breaker. Chips it into here. And that goes into a macerator and makes sand. Sand gets pumped into here. Once there's a full stack, it's sent off to the scrap. If there's enough ash coming from all these peat engines, we'll look into it in a second. We'll do some now. Then it gets made in here into fertilizer. And the fertilizer is loaded into this chest and picked up by the train here. It comes through. Now that it's gone. So, all the ash comes from peat engines, and the peat engines come from these bog farms, 4 of them, which, as you'll see in a second, generate a lot of extra peat. So you'll see here, all these engines are running. There's a lot of them. And they're all basically full because the red power pipes are smart and they distribute heat, which is gathered into full stacks and then sent out. And they distribute it to all of them, and then the excess comes over to these chests, which are all very full. I'll have to figure out what to do with all this excess before we turn on. I just added that before we started the video, but I'll figure out what to do with all the excess before we shut off the mod. It would be a shame to waste on that. What this here is an auxiliary power system, so these 8 engines on the back will take biofuel, and they do that. This tank is filled by a tank cart that runs all the way back. See it out there in the distance to that tank loader there, which is connected back into the main farm of the shore. So that's the bog train. And again, reduces the flow of all this material because it's basically peat earth. So peat earth comes in, it's put into this peat bog, and then it's sent out to replant. Whenever peat is then harvested, you can see dirt comes out. Now, and then you need some dirt to make more peat. There's twice as much. So what this does is it puts the dirt back into this chest, where it's picked up, and then this one here is configured to drop off bog earth. So the train comes through, it just drops off bog earth, which goes into here. Now if there's extra, as you can see here, this distributor pipe is back into this chest. So the next time through, the next train will pick up, actually it drops off here, drops off bog earth here, whatever is in here. So now that chest has picked up that peat, that bog earth, and dropped it over here. It goes over here, any extra go back up into this chest, and it gets distributed that way via the train to each of these bogs. As you can see, they're all full, and if we check this, it's all the way full. And some of the excess bog gets taken along down here, this vertical track, and once it goes all the way through here, it'll go over to the recycler. So bog earth comes from this nifty little setup, which uses basically a deployer and 3 filters. And the deployer is set up to just deploy whatever is in there whenever this kicks. Now what will be in there is whatever comes out of here is empty buckets. Right now there are no empty buckets because it has water. Water is used in here, these buckets of water. So when we have sand and bog earth, it will make, or sand and it'll make bog earth. Deploy the water bucket, and that goes in here. That fills it up, which this is configured configured to pull empty water or full water buckets out of the deployer back in here. So when there's a lot of sand here, it just keeps rotating through. And then this again is set if there's a full thing of bog earth or any excess, we'll deploy it into deploy it over here where the train can pick it up. Either, depending on what it is, either take it to the recycling bog earth. So it goes in here and gets picked up, and it just keeps going forever. So if there is another bucket, pull some water in. So this actually this deployer with the infinite water source and a timer is a really cool way to get water without having to use pumps and pump it in and everything. And using a bucket of water, since you get the bucket back, it's much more efficient than the old way I had, which was making mulch. It required like a dark room and seeds or cobblestone and wheat and another whole cool system, which is in the other video I did, but it's much more complicated than this and less efficient. So I like this way. So you can see basically the entire thing still runs on sand. So we need sand here and we need sand for the fertilizer, although the fertilizer is not essential because we can use manure. But without this, without sand, there's no bog earth, and without bog earth, there's no bogs. Without bogs, there's no power. Without power, we don't harvest anything, and if we don't harvest anything, the whole thing stops. So that's why that automatic sand generator, basically, everything starts with that, and then runs through there. So the only last thing is what happens to all the excess. That ends up coming down this pipe here, going up there, which there's no way to get up from here, but over here, sunny. See the silo, which this also feeds in. So anything that comes through here and there's no space for it will also get fed into here. Put in these chests where I have some backlog of excess in case anything dies out, but then the rest gets put in this chest and then periodically sent up these tubes to the recycler. Two recyclers, because when things are really hopping, a lot comes through, and that gets sent down these pipes into the chest down below that we saw here, this chest, and then all this scrap with a timer is sent one stack at a time down this way back to where we saw. So back on our progress. You can see this is still really full and that other chest is really full. So let's monitor how much orange stuff we've gone through. So far, not a ton. Which means we can keep cooking up that scrap for a long time. And we still have tons of power because it's still keeping up, but we should be able to see some of these, like the levels starting to, so like this one starting to get empty, and then as is this one and this one. And when these start to get fully empty, then this will start to drop faster because it will have fewer things powering these MFEs. Also in the beginning, the MFEs are completely full when everything's fully charged up, so that also makes it appear like it's not losing any energy. It's being totally efficient. But, so you can see when those two pumps down below get fired up, it puts in scrap just about as fast as it used it. A little slower, but it's not better that than overflowing in my book. Because when it starts to overflow, A, you lose your scrap, and B, you start to really lag the server. So see, we've already gotten a lot of UV matter this time. But I'm just going to leave this. I think if there's anything else interesting to show, I guess I can show you what the inside of the other tank looks like. Just 3 big tanks. And you can see we're starting to lose ground here a little bit. One important thing to note, this tank here, one of the tanks, not this one, this tank over here, you see on the far side, there is no pump attached to it. What that means is that even if all the, the trains over here drain all of these other tanks dry while they're fueling these fermenters, which they could do if I just leave it. They're all drained dry. There will still be this entire tank here that is still being used only to fuel the electricity over here. Now, there is inside here all these peat engines. If I needed to, emergency-wise, I could turn those on to start to generate more biomass, so that I could get everything started again. But ideally, obviously, since I glassed them off and everything, I'd rather not have to do that. So instead, we have this one extra tank. There's, you know, there's 8 here. There's only 7 in the orange containers in the biofuel. And that means that there'll always be this one here where fuel can get pumped out to the engines. Now, being pumped out of all of them, ideally, because it comes in faster than it's used by these. And there's a lot of them here, so with just one pump, some of them would start to shut down. And it might not be enough. Now, they obviously have a reservoir too, so you should be able to catch it in time. I should be able to catch it in time. That doesn't always happen if something comes up and I get called away from my computer while I'm trying to make UU matter. I guess this is the train line. The auxiliary power goes on, but I don't have that turned on for some reason right now. That about covers it. So, oh, and there's some auxiliary solar power here too. That always runs. It runs into the same lines as all of these. But what it means is, should the bogs completely die off, I can cut power off from the rest of the farms. Just leave this solar power on, and at least this one bog farm will start producing peat bog. That's assuming I run out of all this stuff too. But right now it would be very hard to power it back up. But if I did use all that for something and then it ran out, this happened before, I can turn off the distribution of the peat and then just leave that one solar powered one running until I have enough peat that when I release it into here, enough of these engines fire up that it starts to power the other peat bogs, and then we start to get more peat again, and then everything turns back on. So these are columns. I'm using the saw to the peat with pillars instead of like full blocks. So looked appropriate right there. Because these all look slightly different based on the angle, and sometimes it looks like the track might be going inefficiently. But that's all, again, to make the pipes work correctly and be as minimal as possible. Because I'm having some real problems with all the wheat farms. The wheat farms also put out seeds and wheat. So, here they would. So every time wheat's harvested, there's wheat and seeds going out, and there's all of this sugarcane, and that's all flying through there, and then all the peat, and all the ash, and everything else. I was really having some networking and lag problems. So a lot of the things that look a little funkier, the trains, which I actually really like, a lot of things that look a little funkier, are just to reduce that stuff, and they seem to work really well doing that. So, and then I glassed this whole thing because I thought it looked cool, and I didn't want anyone accidentally walking in there and stopping one of the trains in the middle of the track. If you don't notice that, then you know, it would basically put one of the fermenters out of production. This is what it looks like underneath. And this funky part here is because otherwise the wire goes right along here. The launcher that's underneath this liquid loader is always turned on, so the tank never actually loads any liquid. One other weird thing that happened, this is, if anyone runs into this problem, I have one powered rail here, and it's not because I need it, because for some reason, even though all of these are in a like mirror configuration, if I put a regular rail there, it would look straight at first, and then when the cart was launched, it would turn into a turning rail, and then we'd have 2 carts on the same track. So A, this far fermenter would never get any material, and B, you know, the carts would collide on here, so this one wouldn't get it either. But I found if I put a powered rail, it they can't be curved. So that was the only place that happened. All the rest of these, you can see they all run in parallel. They all have no problems. I don't know what happened there. But that's how you can solve that. You do run into that problem. So there you go. That's, I guess, the final version of this in working form. I haven't decided once we do upgrade, or once the upgrade becomes available, new version of the server. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this space. I might just leave it as sort of like a, you know, a museum to how people used to make diamonds, you know, back when I was your age, etc. Because, you know, this old-fashioned farming is not going to be viable. It's starting to get empty. That's dropping. But once that drops to 0 or whatever, then I just turn the machine off, let it charge up, and it charges up pretty fast. And then hopefully can turn it back on again, come around to turn it back on again, because if I don't, the scrap starts to overflow. Because right now, not a lot of scrap will be being produced because the fermenters are actually working. But once they fill up the tanks in there, and then their internal reservoir fills up, then all of the sugarcane that comes through just gets sent to make scrap. It's a lot. So, anyway, that's everything. And once I get started on my new idea, by sometime this weekend or next week, I will try to post a video of how that's going. I haven't quite decided how, or where on the map. But anyway, just wanted to record that this idea could work, because all my friends using Equivalent Exchange are making fun of me, saying why not just use Equivalent Exchange, it's way easier. Which is true, if all you want is diamonds. But I get to play with a lot of trains and stuff, which is cool, and I'll probably do a lot more of. And, you know, there's a lot of trial and error, but I found got to play a lot of red power too, and a lot of power pipes, and a bunch of other stuff. So I thought it was fun. Anyway, there you go.